When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light you see. No, I won't. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand. Yes, stands. That's what this episode's about. Bases and stands. It's also about uniquely designed characters. I'm still working the title at the time of recording this, to be blatantly honest with you. So there's that. I got a request from a patron, and I always like to give a little bit of special treatment to them. So they said, hey, why don't we do an episode about building stands for mocks, bases, that sort of thing. So that is what this episode is about. But I also wanted to focus on, just because all the mocks I picked that had stands were also very unique in the way the character had been designed, I kind of wanted to put the two together. So there you go. It's raining at the time of this recording as well, so if you hear rain in the background, well, that's it. That's what it is. Anyway, let's dive into this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series, the show where we inspire you to build your own cool Bionicle mocks by taking a look at some of the other stuff in the community, and we'll closely examine it, see what sort of stuff they've done, give you some tips and tricks as well along the way, and hopefully we'll be able to get those creative juices flowing and you can build your own cool Bionicle mock. But let's begin with the first mock today. And that first mock is by a one Molly Ray, and this mock is called Orion Blade of the High Seas, which I almost read as Onion Blade of the High Seas, which I don't have a joke for that. This mock looks nothing like an onion. It's very clearly a shark, but maybe this shark is like an ogre and it has layers. I don't know, man. Anyway, this is a fantastic mock, which is that unique character design thing we're talking about, and it has a stand. So let's start talking about that stand as well. And no, I don't mean stands like in JoJo, What's-a-Majiggy. I mean stands like a stand. But if you want to go that route, by all means you can. Anyway, so the base on this mock is super, super cool. I actually helped Molly out with it too. She wanted a bit of advice, and I suggested some of the dark tan around the water there, and I think she did a bang-up job adding that in. I think it looks fantastic. But why does this stand work so well on this mock? Well, the reason that I think it works so well is, and it's something we'll talk about a lot in this episode, the idea that a base around a mock can add so much context, but also really help to build character with the mock that you place on top of the base. So why is that? Well, let's take a look at the character specifically. So we can tell, because he's on this this beach here, and there's a little bit of treasure behind him and stuff, we go, okay, well, he's clearly a pirate. He scours the seas, he walks around on the land in search for treasure, all that sort of stuff, and we get this very nice picture of the world that he lives in, and who he is as a dude, as a shark dude. We know what he does. But I think if this mock didn't have the stand, I'd look at this shark guy and I'd be like, oh yeah, this is a shark dude that lives under the water, and he sunk a ship and decided he was going to use it as a shield. And he's got some cool like fin from another fish, made it into a blade, and he found a pirate hat one day and he's like, I'm going to wear this. Hey. So I kind of get two completely different stories depending on whether this mock has a stand or not. And those two stories could be one and the same. Maybe that's how he became a pirate and scoured the seas. But while they are slightly similar, you get a very much more like specific, targeted idea of who they are because of the stand. And I think we'll go into even more detail about that later as we talk. So stay tuned for that. But I think that's something that's so powerful about it. If you're somebody who likes to pack in a lot of character or story into a mock, you get this beautiful thing here where so much of that can be conveyed simply by what it's standing on. I think this is a great example of that too. Another thing that's cool too, this mock is very much primarily grey with a little bits of silver and whatever thrown in there. But this stand also helps to add that lovely pop of colour too. It just helps to alleviate some of the monochromatic colour scheme on this mock. Which isn't quite monochromatic, but whatever. And it just helps to add that little extra pop. And so maybe that's something you've done. You've built a mock currently and you're like, it's kind of only like one or two colors. I wish it had an extra burst of color, but I don't want to add any color. Well, maybe you could just add a stand and that'll help add that little extra pop that really makes the mock shine, you know? In the last episode of Biss, we spoke about Anthony Wilson's Helric's mock. And I mentioned how the little gold sort of dishes and things made it kind of look like a constellation, and it also sort of highlighted elements of the mock as well. I think that's a fantastic example of how much a stand can really enhance the way you view the mock. And yeah, not only that, just add a nice pop of color to a mock and make it just look even cooler than it already is. So if you're looking for an even more stands in this stand episode, go back to the last episode. But regardless, we're focusing on these mocks. Let's talk about those today. So that's kind of it for the stand. To be fair, I love all the little details like the anchor, the treasure chest, little bits of grass, all that sort of stuff. Really helps to add that little extra pop of detail. If you are planning on building a system stand like this, or a system base, however you want to word it, and you're new to system, you're a Bionicle guy, you're like, I don't know what to do. I do have some videos in the Behind the Build playlist talking about Lego landscaping, all that sort of stuff. Be sure to give those a watch. That might be able to help you. But if you have watched those or you don't feel like watching them, be sure to reach out, send me a message, because if you're not aware, I build a lot of systems, so I'm happy to help you out there where I can, you know? Or message any other kind of system builder too. Hey, you don't even have to ask me, you know? I'm sure any other people will be happy to lend a hand, but I tend to respond to most messages that I get in general, but the ones that are specifically like, hey, can you help me with this mock? I always do my best to reply to those. If I've ever missed any of those, it's not really one I'm conscious of, but I'm going off subject here. So yes, if you need some help, don't be afraid to reach out. But that's it for this stand. Let's talk about this mock because it's fantastic. So I love the shaping on the face here, just all these different small tooth pieces. Teeth? I said tooth and teeth at the same time there. All the different teeth pieces there, and how that sort of forms this beautiful rounded shark-like face using a lot of system pieces here. It looks great. The way that Molly has kind of made it look a bit more like a hammerhead shark too, the way that the head sort of protrudes out like that, definitely helps to make it look more menacing. It almost kind of looks like eyebrows almost. It kind of gives it this sort of more sharp, rounded look. It kind of looks like he's... I don't know, a bit more sinister, a bit more evil, just from some of the different shapes and lines that we're getting here. It gives it that more sinister look. It's cool. Also, the pop of the spring green claw there also really stands out against the grey. That's fantastic. I do also love this pirate sword design here, using a Vaki weapon, but also building this intricate hilt for the sword that very much resembles sort of typical pirate swords that you might see. A lot of pieces in there. But mainly the sort of pieces of note are some of the Hero Factory Exoforce robot bad guy arm pieces there that kind of form the main kind of curvature of that piece. It's a really solid looking hilt design for that sword. Very well done. And a great way of making this mock look even more piratey, you know? It's cool. It's really cool. I mentioned before the head design uses a bunch of system, but there's other elements on this mock that also use a bunch of systems, specifically like the tail and the other like dorsal fin and other fins on this body. And I think that's a really great way of specifically using system pieces, because Molly was really able to very effectively showcase the exact look of a fin like you would see on a shark, or the tail like you would see on a shark. And while that could be possible with Bionicle elements, it's so much more specific, it's so much more realistic, and it's so much more authentic when it's designed like this. And so I love what Molly's done here, how she's really got a beautiful blend between system and Bionicle or construction pieces, and really focused on the areas that really desperately needed the system, and then had other areas on the mock where she's gone, okay, no, it would work perfectly well with Bionicle stuff. So I think she's played to her own personal strengths of just... to be fair, Molly's pretty good at system, to be fair, when she puts it in her Bionicle stuff, but I think she's played to her strengths of like finding a lot of areas where she will use her Bionicle, which is where she's, you know, excels at, and then gone, okay, the areas that need to have that little bit of extra personality, extra detail or sense of realism, she's focused in with the system there, which I think is just a good kind of rule of thumb in general. Like, you know, if you're far better at Bionicle, by all means, focus on the Bionicle, but when you need the little bit something extra, maybe that's time to bring in the system here, you know. And by the way, I want to clarify, Molly, you're fantastic at your system and your Bionicle. I'm not saying one's better than the other here, but as we see on this mock, you've beautifully combined the two. They work perfectly in unison here. Final thing, because I'm talking about this mock for almost 10 minutes in the time of this recording, but I'll edit some of that down. I love how she's got some gauntlets kind of on the arms, the lower arms there. They're that kind of gunmetal sort of like interesting metallic color that came on some Knights Kingdom sets. It kind of looks like he's wearing like a pirate gauntlet or some sort of armor. And they also appear again on the kneecaps and also on the upper legs as well, and maybe other places that I'm not currently seeing as I look at the image. But that could actually be straight up armor that this mock has. Or it could also just be a part of the skin, and it kind of looks a little bit more, I don't know, there's something about the sort of angles of that part that do look a little bit more shark-like to me. I don't quite know what it is, but I think that was just a really good choice of piece because it really fits the aesthetic that this mock has. So that's awesome. So that's enough for this mock, because I think I could keep talking about it. It's really, really good. But Molly, know that you've done a fantastic job. And I think there's a lot of really base principles here that really fit the concept of today's episode of stands and of just really unique character design. Character design, as I really emphasize that word there. Not for any reason, just I didn't emphasize it and I'm just fixing my... Anyway, so there's that. And I think if you are looking for a more unique character design in a mock, play with your system and your Bionicle hybrids in your mock. It works well. All right, next mock. And oh my god, we go from one fantastic mock to another fantastic mock. This mock, honestly, is one of the best mocks I've seen ever. This is by Tino Pautonen, and it's called... I don't know how to pronounce that, guys. I'm sorry. Mictlantecuhtli. Yep, that's the one. I think this is a real thing. He said here, this was built for the BioCup 2020, the theme being myths and folklore from Latin America. And he said, in Aztec culture, this guy was the god of death. And here's an image of the actual, well, a depiction of god of death. So sort of a bit of inspiration, I guess, that he would have taken looking at images similar to this for this mock. And oh my, did he do a good job. You thought I was going to talk long about the last mock, but oh, here we go. So, let's talk about the stand first, because it's a bit of a smaller stand compared to the last one we saw. This one here really helps to provide a sense of scale, you know? This mock itself wouldn't necessarily be that tall, but when you get a little nano figure like this, a little gold trophy guy there, and you build this little small scale temple, suddenly you're like, oh my god, he's massive. And so I love the idea of if you want to do that, you want to build a mock that you really want to showcase is huge, but you're just building it in a different sort of size or scale. Building a stand that represents that is a great idea. You know, for example, you could build Godzilla. You could build him in Bionicle form. But then you build a little mini Tokyo using, little itty-bitty tiny system pieces. And suddenly Godzilla turns from a decent average-sized mock to a massive mock because you're starting to play around with scale there. So, fantastic idea to do that. And a great way of showcasing, the desired effect that you wanted with the mock. I think, too, especially because this is the god of death, I also kind of love the almost sort of, symbolism or sort of storytelling behind this mock. The idea that this guy's kind of approaching the temple and suddenly sees this huge, towering monster of god of death. It almost sort of seems to be like this representation of like a fear of death or something as it kind of really looms over his world. I think that's just cool. Again, really unique storytelling here, which works well. So this mock, let's take a look at the head design because it's beautiful. It uses some of these toothed gear pieces in tan, which we'll see some again later in the episode. Those work so well as this sort of sinister looking toothed mouth. It's fantastic. The eye design on this mock too is also just beautiful. Just these beautiful piercing white pupil eyes here, using some of the Baraki eyepieces in white. Those really just stand out. They look just so menacing. It looks like he's staring into your soul. That's very fitting for a god of death, I suppose. I still love all the the headdress on this mock. It looks so well, he says it's fitting in with the Aztec culture there. It really seems to represent exactly that. Same with the sort of jewelry and the sort of shoulder cloth, all that other sort of stuff. Very, very accurate, very well designed too. It just works so well and adds a lot of just pizzazz to this mock. He just looks snazzy with it, but it also, honestly too, I also think it kind of adds to the look that he is a god of death. Just these almost sort of weird kind of spiky things coming out of his head, and these different kind of dishes and circles around his chest. They almost could look like eyes or something, like so many things are looking at him at once. And there's just a sort of sense of fear behind it, which I think can kind of relate to the fact that he is a god of death. I think it's just very fitting. I also love too the pose of this mock here, just the way he's sitting on the top of the temple. He almost looks slightly cheeky, and just that it's not that it's not a natural pose, because I think it kind of is, but he's kind of crouched down and almost sort of hunched over with his hand kind of reaching forward, and he's holding this skull as well. He looks like he's up to no good. He looks like he maybe shouldn't even be there, you know? So I love the personality that's just being conveyed through this. And I also love, too, some of his other little bits of jewelry here, like these little blue bracelets here on his hand. That's very fitting there. It's very cool. So why is this mock so cool with its unique character design? Well, just the intricate, beautiful like jewelry and clothing and attire that this mock has, and the posing and the face, you know? A lot you can do just with some little good accessories, some nicely posed mocks, and some sinister teeth designs, that's for sure. So just a beautiful mock, and another great example of how a stand can work very well to convey scale. Very cool. So 15 minutes in, and I've covered 2 of the 8 mocks I'm supposed to talk about. But here we go. It's going to be a good episode. A long one, but a good one. All right, let's power through these, though. This next mock is by Jimmy Furno. What a great name. And this is called Yggdrasil City, the center of the universe. So this is cool. This is like a more kind of modern interpretation of Yggdrasil, which is the world tree from Norse mythology. But you kind of see it a lot in a whole bunch of different mythoses and fictional stories and all sorts of different things as well. Just this idea of a world tree that kind of connects multiple realms or kind of planes of existence and stuff, and it kind of feeds through all the different worlds as the roots traverse them and stuff. But I like that this is a sort of more futuristic interpretation of that idea, and it's almost this sort of machine or this sort of city that connects all these different worlds. So I think it's a fantastic idea of using the planet sets to convey that. These planet sets were Star Wars sets, so these are all different planets from Star Wars, but, you know, they don't have to exclusively be from Star Wars. They can be whatever planet your imagination can conjure up. And I think this just looks just gorgeous. It's really cool. So this mock itself is just essentially just a big sort of base. It's not necessarily a stand for a mock, like nothing is standing on it, but I still like the idea of doing that. Why not build your own sort of big architecture just as a mock, you know? Let's take out the middleman. Let's remove the dude on top of the stand and just build a really cool looking stand, you know? Why not? I don't know, I just think that would be cool, the idea of doing some sort of mad Professor Matoran with a beard and a monocle as he walks around this place. It's like, oh, I monitor all the planets. I do, you know? I think that'd be kind of cool. But yeah, it's just a fun little world here, just the way that he's used all these different Bionicle pieces to create these buildings and skyscrapers and towers. It's awesome. I also love how many Technic lift arms and beams he's used here to form the floor and the different sort of walls and stairs and buildings and things. It's awesome. And I think it's really inspiring too. If you've got a bunch of those sort of longer lift arm pieces there, you could very easily use them as almost sort of building blocks to build a floor, build walls, all sort of stuff like that. It works well, and it's a good example of just how well it can work. So that's awesome. Some nice little ship designs here too, as these sort of ships fly from, I suppose, planet to planet. It looks fantastic. It's cool. Yeah, I just think this is a fun little world, and I think it's a really great way of showcasing just how ham you could go with building a stand, and also the cool characters that could fit in this world, you know? Yes, I know this episode was also supposed to talk about unique character designs, but and this mock doesn't necessarily have a character to go with it, but I still like the ideas that can come from this world and the characters that could fit into it. So it still conjures up elements in the imagination, and I like that. So fantastic mock here. Let's move on to the next mock. This is by Torrent Axe 97, and it's called Manhunter Carax. So this is pretty cool. This one here has a stand just so the mock can support itself, because it is this sort of more bug beetle-like creature here. It has a lot of sort of more spindly limbs and things, and it's a little bit more sort of top-heavy on the back, as the majority of the pieces are there on the back. So it couldn't really necessarily support itself. That's just kind of how it would work. But if you want to build a mock that's like that doesn't even worry about being able to support itself, making a stand to hold it up is just a great idea. So that you can kind of build in new ways that you may not have been able to before. I think that's just awesome. It's just really smart. It's just really cool. And yeah, great idea to do a stand with. So here we see again the same gear teeth design here on the face, and these really awesome menacing eyes that are made using some of the flexible 1x2 sort of lift arm pieces that are that kind of rubber material. You can kind of slide all sorts of different pieces into those and create very funky, very different eye designs here. Looks fantastic. It's a really menacing, scary-looking, bug-like beetle design of sorts. I love how it looks here. I also love, too, all these sort of spiddly bug-like limbs. It very much looks like what you would probably see on some sort of bug, but they've been given a little bit more of a personality as he's added a few more kind of limbs or claws or things to them, but it's very much taking inspiration from the real world and making it more sort of sinister and scary, which I think is the intent, and it's been done well. Also, just the kind of bug-like texture that's on the butt and the chest of this mock here. Very fitting, very well done, using kind of a lot of repeated elements here. It does just look more like that kind of bug, what is the word, like carapace? Am I saying the right? I don't even know what that word means. I'm hoping that's the correct word. Maybe I just said, like, I just threw the word photosynthesis in there and you're like, that's not even remotely correct, Ben, but I tried. But still, there's a very nice kind of, as Mitch Henry would say, crunchy bug aesthetic to this mock. It's awesome. And menacing and scary too. Dude, bugs that are massive are terrifying. This is a great example of that. So, certainly a cool idea if you want to make a unique character design is to do exactly that. Just pay attention to the real world, focus in on things that do exist in the world, and find unique or different ways that you can stretch that, play with that, expand that, make that bigger, make that scarier, or just make it look more unique, or your own personal touches to it. And you'll have a really unique character design like we see here. So awesome work. Next mock. This is by Radix, and it's called Bella Submarine. So the stand on this mock here, I think what's so cool about it is it's a nice way to kind of spice up this mock and add a little bit of extra color, extra detail to it. The submarine itself is a fantastic design, and the fact that it uses one of the Belleville figures in there is a lovely addition as well. But this mock just pops so much more because it has this little coral base underneath it. It's a fun way of just playing around with nice piece usages. You know, we take a look here. There's a mutter head being used as a rock. That's genius. That's awesome. And what I think is the spider monkey head from Ben 10 is also being used as some coral there. That's another great part use. So it's cool how this beautiful spice of color and all these clever part usages and just, again, a bit more context for where this submarine is exploring just does a lot to this mock, you know? And hey, maybe you wanted to build like a fun little table scrap and you're like, it's cool, but it's just kind of missing something. Maybe adding a stand like this could help to really spice it up. And of course, I'm not saying that this mock is just, you know, a table scrap or just sort of a subpar mock or anything. The submarine itself is fantastic, but it's made even cooler because of the stand. So yeah, awesome to see that sort of circular or sort of semicircle cockpit piece there with the Belleville figure in there. That's awesome. So in terms of more unique character designs, doing that, taking a look at some of those more obscure themes, or even some of the not so obscure themes, you know, like Friends, for example. Could you play with any Friends mini dolls, or play with some minifigures, or play with, a Scala doll, a Belleville doll, or all sorts of weird things? Could you somehow implement that into a mock? What sort of crazy cool things could you conjure up if you actually did something like that? I think it's well, at least something to think about, you know? How can you use that sort of stuff to your advantage and get something that's really unique and different, you know? This is a cool mock. Let's move on to the next mock. It's by Jack the Mad, and this is called Pearly Whites. So the stand on this mock here, I love that it just adds a little bit of extra something to it. It looks a bit more like a war zone, which kind of fits well with his Gatling gun arm and the bullets on the floor. But what I love so much about this stand is that it's not really super crazy with techniques, but it still helps with the presentation of the mock. So let's take a look at the stand. It's essentially just a whole bunch of different sizes of light bluish grey Lego bricks. You could easily find that sort of thing in certain Lego sets that would probably just come with those exact pieces. But you could also easily find that sort of stuff on a pick-a-brick wall, which you may not be able to have access to at the moment with COVID-19, but you can also do bricks and pieces or a bricklink order, all sorts of stuff like that. So it's not too hard to come across just a healthy selection of light bluish grey pieces there. You've also got a little slight bit of some brown plates there. Again, not a huge amount of pieces, probably only like 9 or 10 there. And then a couple little accent things, like a little stem on the floor, a little bit of grass, just to add a little nice pop of colour. And then these awesome, what are they, 6x5 or 6x6? Sort of larger brick pieces here that have this sort of beam-like aesthetic to them, so it looks a little bit more industrial. Looks like a sort of broken down wall with some supports behind it or something. Again, not using a huge amount of pieces, has some little subtle things added to it just to spice it up. It works. You don't have to be super complex with it. You don't have to be amazing at system, or you don't have to build a super complex stand or base. you could just do something like this, just something that adds a little bit of extra spice, isn't overly technically complicated, but it gets the job done. It helps to just add a little extra something to the mock. It works. So that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think it's a good reminder to you don't have to break the bank with it, you know? So the character design on this mock is awesome. I love the face design here. So much personality thrown into it. The teeth. This mock is called Pearly Whites because of the teeth design on this mock. He's using some of the new jewel pieces that come in some of the Lego Dot sets, and they are that awesome new satin white color. And wow, they look awesome as teeth. What a great design like that, and the cigar that he's smoking as well. That's awesome. That's awesome. Don't smoke, kids. But yeah, it's super cool. What a great idea for a sort of toothy mouth design. It adds so much character to this mock, so much personality. Such a great idea. And something you could easily do too if you want to build a uniquely designed character is find a way of, I don't know, accentuating something. Maybe they've got big, weird teeth, or they're smoking a cigar, or they got sunglasses on or something like that. Can you actually implement that into the mock and really make them look, I don't know, goofy, different, fun, exciting? Yeah, find the ways that you could do that. And that could just be from doing something like that, taking a body part, making it bigger, kind of pronouncing it a little bit more. Just little fun things like that can go a long way. So that's Pearly Whites with his awesome Gatling gun and his cool kind of robot arm of sorts. It's a really solid character design. Let's move on to the next mock, which is the second last mock. Look, guys, I kind of went the rough average length of the episode anyway. But this is another cool mock, so I might talk about this one for a bit too. Let's find out. But let's stop talking about it and actually start talking. So, this mock here is by VB, and it's called the Anito. So I think this stand is it's simply gorgeous, but I think it also helps to create contrast and also add atmosphere. So we take a look at the character here that's sitting atop of these head statues. Its color scheme is black and white, very, very much black with little subtle bits of white there. And then we take a look at the stand, and there's absolutely no black in this mock at all, and no white in the stand at all. I said the mock before I meant the stand. And I think it works so well. Like, when we read the description here, it simply says, a visitor from the world of spirits. And I kind of look at this and I go, like, I imagine there's somebody who lives on this island, and it has these cool, like, Easter Island heads on it. And suddenly this spirit just appears from another world, and it looks so alien in the landscape. It's just this sort of wispy shadow that's appeared, and it's doing some sort of mischievous, interesting things, you know? I love that. And I think this stand very much helps to create an atmosphere and a mood to this mock, you know? And that's simply through the contrasting colors, you know? It also helps too because there's very different textures, you know? We take a look at the textures of the landscape here. They're very smooth, very organic, very free-flowing, I guess. We take a look at the textures on this sort of shadowy spirit. His hair has this interesting kind of wisp to it, and there's still a smoother texture to this mock, but it looks more sort of ghostly and spiritual, whereas the landscape below it looks more sort of solid and organic, whereas the other thing is a little bit more, free-flowing and wispy, I guess. And I like that. I like the idea that the stand, like we've said before, adds a bit of storytelling, adds a bit of context to it, and that storytelling and context is really expanded upon when there's contrasting textures and contrasting colors. So certainly something to think about if you're building a stand and you want to really use it to your advantage. So going back to the stand here, there's a whole bunch of different plant pieces here from some of the little kind of carrot top stem pieces and a whole bunch of these newer little leaf pieces here. They really, really do look nice here. A couple of flowers thrown in as well. If you've got a whole bunch of kind of foliage, plant-like pieces, they're just great pieces to play with and could work so well on a little stand like this. So certainly something to play around with. But what I've kind of noticed about this stand too, I don't know how much of it is actually attached. You take a look at some of these dark green pieces here. I don't know how much they are connected to things. And is that a problem? Honestly, I don't think so, you know? Maybe that's something you want to do. You just kind of want to like kind of place a few pieces around the base of the mock, and that can be your stand, you know? You don't even have to connect them. If it communicates something, if it looks nice, if it's got an atmosphere to it, then why not? If they're not connected, I don't think it really matters, you know? Yeah, something to think about, you know? So there's that. But yes, I think this mock is beautiful. The way it's playing with textures and colors is just on point. Some brilliant stuff. And also, the two heads here, these two statue heads, very well designed. Love the use of the tires. or these big wheel pieces, not really tires, and just the kind of comical expressions that they both have. It's just awesome. It's really, really cool. So fantastic mock by VB. Let's move on to the final mock. It's by Awesomeness Born, and it's called Dullahan of Ireland. So the stand on this mock is kind of more just little like kind of subtle highlights. It's less of an actual physical stand. Just building two little skulls and then building this little kind of small vignette, which is a little sort of gravestone there. That's all it needs to be. Just a little small subtle thing, nothing else. It doesn't even need to fully encompass the whole mock. It's not like it needs to stand on top of it. It could just be a nice little like accompanying piece that just adds a little something else, The gravestone and the skulls help to add a more sort of almost like Halloween kind of creepy vibe to this mock, and I think it works very well. So you can be very subtle with your stands. Don't forget that. This is a good example of how fantastically that works. So let's take a look at the mock itself. So there's an awesome looking sort of spine design here that this mock is using as a weapon. That's just awesome, using a whole bunch of different bricks with the modified bricks, like headlight bricks and Travis bricks, all that sort of stuff there, and feeding that into a flex tube does very much make it look a lot like a human spine that he's using as a weapon here. And I love that this mock is that sort of headless horseman aesthetic, but what I love so much about that is the way that those kind of trap pieces that came on Bionicle G2 sets, how those are sort of forming a sort of kind of neck guard or a sort of shoulder armor around this mock. The sort of lines on the teeth of that sort of trap piece, they kind of really draw your eye towards where his head should be. So there's almost this really beautiful kind of framing device around the neck that's helping you to sort of really draw your attention to where the head should be, and then suddenly you realize, oh, there is no head. Like, what's up with that? So I really like that. It looks like it's such a deliberate choice that it doesn't have a head. It's not just like, oh yeah, I just remove the head off of my, Hero Factory mock, like whatever, it's very much working with the aesthetic of the mock, and there's very deliberate design elements on it that help to really showcase the fact that this mock is a headless character and that it is, a deliberate choice. It's, it's complementing the ideas and the choices that the builder Awesomeness Born here has done. So that's really cool, Sometimes I feel like when you're building a mock, you can do that. You can make, a bold or distinct choice, and I don't know, people won't necessarily see it or fully understand why you've done it. Like, some people might look at this mock and go like, why doesn't it have a head? But the way that he's designed this, it makes total sense as to why he doesn't, because it has been removed, and he's wielding it on a chain or something like that. It's cool. It's cool. Some other stuff that I love about this mock is the neck design on this mock, using a whole bunch of those Hero Factory foot pieces and just sort of slightly angling them in that manner. It looks like this awesome sort of horse neck armor, and it creates this, beautiful just sort of angle and smooth texture. It's just fantastic. And the use of some other Hero Factory and Bionicle G2 armor pieces there on the head of the horse to make even more horse armor. Just an awesome armor design. It looks fantastic. And all the different chains too, whether that's the chains around his feet, the ones holding the head, or the ones holding the horse. It's just a nice use of chains. Chains are an underrated thing. I always love a good chain. So this is a fantastic mock, really strong levels of personality and character, but also some fantastic texture design and some great use of pieces, and just a well-constructed mock, honestly. So that's it for a whole bunch of mocks with stands and some good old character design here in today's episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. So hopefully this inspired you a little bit. If you would like to see some of your own mocks featured on the show, you can submit them through the submission email that you're currently seeing on your screen right meow. Send me as many pictures as you want, or as few pictures as you want, or as little or as large of a description as you want. Send it to the email, I'll add it to the list, and one day it'll appear on the show. But do remember, I got a lot of submissions to work through, so your patience is very much key. And also, bear in mind, a lot of people will submit stuff to me and say, hey, what's the next episode, so that I can submit mocks to that theme. Don't do that. Just submit whatever, man. I make the theme based off what's submitted, not the other way around. So don't worry so much. Just submit away. It's all good in the hood. Also, if you want to check out some of the other awesome things that I've got going on my own social media, you can see that in the links below. Instagram, Flickr, Facebook, it's all there for you. You can check out some of my system stuff if you're looking for a bit of inspiration with a system stand on a mock in the future, perhaps. Additionally, check the links in the description below to the mocks that you saw in today's episode. You can find all that there in the description below. It's there for you today. So that's all the time we got for today, good sirs and madams. But since it has so ordered be, by a time to rise and a time to fall, come fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all.